Hey, I'm Ben Silverio.
And I'm Aaron Klein.
And I'm Ansel Birch, your host in post.
And it's
time to party.
Hello, beloved listeners. This is your host in post, Ansel Birch, coming to tell you that this is a special bonus episode made from material that we thought was just not the best thing to start off the season with. As you can hear throughout this recording, there are dogs barking, airplanes flying over. This was the very first opportunity we had to try and record after the pandemic lockdowns, and we did it outside, fully masked, under a O'Hare-bound flyover. So you can hear some airplanes flying, you can hear some dogs barking, you can hear all sorts of background noises that normally we would not want to be part of our recordings. We thank you for bearing with us in this special bonus episode, because we think it's still a good conversation about a movie that is highly underrated. So, as a gentle reminder, we are not doctors, we don't give medical advice. Please drink responsibly. This was recorded on September 26th, 2020. Now, on with the show.
Hey, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Ben.
What up?
Oh, you know.
Just podcasting.
Just podcasting in the plague, you know.
Yeah. So a lot later than we wanted to, but welcome to Time to Party.
Woo!
I'm Ben Silverio.
I'm Aaron Klein.
We're big nerds.
Yeah, we're big nerds. That's
a good way to start, right?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to start. On this podcast, we are going to talk about time travel movies and talk about whether they hold up, how we feel about them, whether we've ever seen them before. Spoiler, I haven't seen a lot of these movies. We also create a drinking and smoking game, and we also do a little bit of edutainment.
Yeah,
where, you know,
you might learn something.
You might actually learn something,
You're
even if you don't want to. You're welcome.
So this podcast came about because Aaron and I have a mutual love of Back to the Future, but there are so many other time travel movies that we thought we'd take a deep dive.
Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of them don't hold up,
right,
but I feel like a lot of them do, and
yeah.
So I'm excited to see a lot of these. I personally do absolutely love Back to the Future. It's one of my favorite pieces of media of all time, and so I feel very drawn to the idea of time travel, and I love science fiction, so I'm excited to learn more about these.
Yes.
It's gonna be
So
fun. All right, want to introduce our first pick?
Sure, yes. Let's dive right in.
All right.
So the 2007 release from Disney Pictures, Meet the Robinsons, is our first pick. It's kind of an underrated Disney movie.
I was kind of surprised too. Yeah, I saw this in theaters with my sister when I was a kid and had not seen 1 second of it again until I rewatched it the other day and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Was really surprised by how much I enjoyed it for a movie that I did not remember having seen before.
Yes.
So the way that this is going to work is we're going to tell you what movie we're watching. We'll give you a drinking, smoking game that you can play along as you watch.
And then we encourage you to watch the movie and then join in on this discussion for the second half where we tell you our thoughts. And hopefully we don't spoil anything for you.
Yeah. If you don't want to watch it, that's fine. You can just listen to us talk about it. We encourage any and all listening to of our podcast.
Yes, please.
And then after that, during the watching of the movie, we each pick something that we find interesting and want to know more about. And then in our third section is our edutainment section where we'll educate, entertain you.
So the first movie that we'll be talking about here on Time to Party is Meet the Robinsons from 2007. It's about a young boy who travels to the future to find a family that he did not know.
It's really charming. It's a
Right?
really good movie. It holds up really well. I really enjoyed watching it for this, and honestly, I feel like I would have enjoyed watching this even if we weren't recording
Yes.
for something. I definitely recommend watching it. I streamed it on Amazon Prime. That I rented it.
I watched it on Disney Plus, and a big plus of this movie is that it's full of hope.
Yeah.
And if there was any time where we needed hope, it's right now.
Yeah, I agree. I watched this and I got to the end and I was like, this seems like a very prescient movie to be watching right now too. So I'm glad that we picked this one.
Yeah.
This is really good. So please watch along with us and play or don't play the game. Just watch the movie if you want.
Yeah.
So you can join us for our discussion next time.
So, Aaron, why don't we start with the smoking rule?
Okay. Every time there's a pun about an invention or an incident, like not our crust, for example, when you spray them down with the peanut butter and jelly, take a hit.
There's so many puns.
There are a lot. I said specifically about inventions or incidents related to inventions,
Okay.
though. So
That narrows it down a little.
it does narrow it down a little bit.
My first drinking rule
Mhm.
could be your only drinking rule.
Oh,
Because if you do this,
great.
you will be consistently drinking.
Oh, so we're doing like a noises off style drinking.
Yeah.
rule. Got it. Okay.
So, like, I'm glad I wasn't drinking while watching the movie, playing this game, because I would have been like hammered with this one rule.
Yes.
Drink every time you see a bowler hat.
Oh, that's...
At
Why would you do that to yourself?
at the 1 hour point, you just like steadily.
Yeah,
drink.
like the whole movie becomes bowler hats. Like, that's the dystopian future, is that they're surrounded by buildings of bowlers. Just get like 15 shot glasses, just lay them out in front of you and be like, here we go, everybody. It's time to party.
That's what we're called, and that's what we
Hey, it's the name of the show. Okay. Every time Goob looks like he's about to drop dead from the plague, take a hit.
mean. Poor child.
Poor Goob. I really came around on Goob.
Next drinking rule: drink every time you see a frog.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yes.
There's that scene. Is it every time you see an individual frog, or every time a frog is introduced into?
Introduced.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds less like you're gonna die.
Not
Okay.
gonna lie, I picked this rule because the frogs are my favorite character.
The frogs are great. I've forgotten how good the frogs were. It was like a specific piece of this movie I did not remember. So I'm glad that you thought to put one with them. They were such well done characters. And
Yes.
we'll talk about that next. Anytime the coach asks a pertinent question during the science fair, take a hit. I was really surprised by how often he said things that I was like, oh, that's actually a good question. Poor coach.
The next one is a shot rule.
Ooh,
Yeah, so I mean, it only happens once, but it's worth it.
okay.
Take a shot when the T-Rex starts talking.
Ooh, I had a rule about the T-Rex as well.
Ooh.
I said to smoke a blunt when the tiny arms happen.
Yeah, so
You gotta
drink
pre-roll that
and
one, huh?
smoke
Mhm.
for the T-Rex.
Yeah, that was one of the moments where I was like, oh yeah, I remember this movie. I remember that being such a big part of the viral marketing too, so as soon as it happened, I was like, well, this obviously has to be something.
What a bit.
It was a great bit. It really is.
And you, listener, will remember this bit when you watch Meet the Robinsons, which is streaming on Disney+.
That's true. You can also rent it through Prime, which is how I watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I have some more smoking, and I have a couple of drinking rules,
Okay.
actually. Okay, so take a shot of beer, specifically beer. Don't do a shot of hard liquor, otherwise you'll die. Take a shot of beer every time you meet a new family member.
Oh.
Pack and smoke an entire bowl when you figure out who Will's dad is. Just fine if you're playing with a bunch of people, because then it's people like, wait a minute, who?
Dun, dun, dun.
Take a hit every time Lewis fixes something, but it then explodes. That happens several times.
That was a drinking rule. I almost put, drink every time Lewis, makes something explode. That was definitely going to be one of mine. But
Yes.
I'm like, this happens a lot.
It does happen a lot. That's why I said take a hit. Because I was like, yeah, that's, you can make that last for a little while. Another drinking rule, finish your drink when Adam West says, big boy. Because I laughed so hard I cried. It was so good.
Adam West.
It was so satisfying. Take a hit whenever the bowler hat guy does weird shit with his tongue. Also happens a lot.
So much.
Like a lot. It's super fucking weird. Finish your drink when you start to cry.
Aww.
And also take a shot whenever Tom Selleck is his dad.
Yes.
I'm just gonna leave that as an open-ended rule that, may or may not occur several times. Use it to your own discretion, I guess.
Is that what a spoiler? Is it technically?
Well, I mean, they have him describe what he thinks of his dad. Nah, I stand by it.
Okay.
One of the things that we do on the show is that while we're watching the movie, we pick something that we think is interesting, or a piece of technology that we want to know more about, or a cultural moment that we're interested in, and we do a little bit of a shallow dive. We're not going to say it's a deep dive because it's not. Let's not pretend like we're professors. We're not. We just want to edutain you a little bit.
I'm no scientist.
Oh gosh, absolutely not. I am the failed invention of Lewis. I am absolutely not the inventor. So we each pick a topic. You want to go first? You want me to go first? How are you feeling?
Sure. I mean, my thing is a little, just a tidbit.
Okay, yeah.
So, one of the coolest things in the world of Meet the Robinsons has to be the flying cars.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like,
good
flying
choice.
cars are super cool.
Super good choice.
And apparently, in September, a company in Japan successfully tested a flying car that was manned by a person.
What does that mean?
So this car, which is called the SD03, looks like an escape pod, kind of.
Okay.
It's small, but it has like propellers, and it's kind of cool looking. SkyDrive Inc. decided to take this over to the Toyota test field in August, actually. And with a pilot, they circled the field for 4 minutes. And that may sound like a little, but...
That's a lot for nothing.
Exactly. For a piece of technology that doesn't actually exist, that's a whole lot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It doesn't look like a car at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It looks like a jet,
yeah.
Which I guess makes sense. Like, if you're going to be traveling in the air, you would want something that's shaped more like a jet,
right?
Than you would like a car.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we don't have flying DeLoreans yet, but baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps.
You know, and this is a cool step in that direction.
Yeah,
because flying cars back in the 50s was like such a long way away.
Yeah, that was like a thing that people imagined, and like this is what the future means: is that we're gonna have flying cars, and like. We can barely get it together to go back to the moon, let alone make it so that all of our cars are independently flying. Like, I also think it's interesting, too, that we as a country, one of the only places that still has all of our power lines above ground, and I think that is honestly what has really stopped us from investing in the technology for flying cars.
Yeah.
Like, if all of our stuff is buried underground, it would be so much easier for us to use, like, drones for delivery and that kind of stuff, and I think people would have worked more on like even home versions of like jetpacks and stuff, but because we're constantly surrounded by all these power lines, it makes it like, oh well, don't do that. Yeah. Don't fuck everybody's power up, and also like don't kill yourself by flying your power lines.
Right.
So I'm very interested to see as the technology increases and people actually do start to embrace the idea of like flying commercially, but I mean like every day as like a normal part of everyday life. How that impacts what our power lines look like. Yeah.
And traffic patterns.
Yeah.
Like places like LA would hugely benefit from flylying cars.
Give us the tubes like Meet the Robinsons. I want fucking travel tubes. Yeah. It's such a good idea.
It's definitely like a Futurama type of a traveling tube. And I don't know how I'd feel being in that tube, but it's like a big water slide, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're just like sucked down.
Making your commute a lot more fun.
Yeah, you go from like bubble to tube in this, which I liked a lot. Like, I don't know how this works, but I'm interested, I guess. And like the bubble pops, so it's not like it's a solid structure either. It's very interesting. That's what we need from our flying cars. Hyperloops, dude. Listen, future. We live there already. Give us these things.
Get your shit together.
Get your shit together, future. We need this. If you had to convert any car other than a DeLorean into a flying car, what would you pick?
Ooh, this is a stupid answer. The first thing that came to mind was a Plymouth Prowler.
Really?
I don't know, because it looks like one of Batman's vehicles, and if it flies, fair. That just adds to it.
That makes
Practically,
sense.
I'd probably want my Nissan Rogue to fly, because it has enough space for all my shit.
Right, yeah, you want something that's big enough to carry stuff and actually function as a car as opposed to a bike.
Yeah, because
a sky bike.
Because this car from SkyDrive doesn't have a trunk. It doesn't look like.
Right, exactly. It's transportation. It's not actually a car as we know it today.
Yes.
I've not really thought about that until right now, actually, about how it's gonna change as we take to the skies.
Maybe they should start making Mini Coopers fly. those things are surprisingly spacious.
They are very spacious. I would absolutely agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and I'm sure the parking issues, when they're not flying, would be better than, like a navigator.
This is another thing where
flying.
we need to follow Japan's lead and just have those, like, parking structures with the elevators on them, where you just, like, shove a car into it, and you're like, well, that's going 84 stories down into the ground. See you tomorrow, I guess. Like,
yeah,
that's what we need.
do more stuff underground.
Oh my god, absolutely. Get that shit out of here.
So, your
Yes.
edutainment.
Let me edutain you. Okay, so there's a lot of things about this movie that I was really interested in. I talked about this a little in our review section, but the idea of our vision for the future and how we get to what the future is supposed to be, I find very interesting. The idea that technology can continue to exponentially grow by 50% every year. That's just been proven to not be true, but that's a lot of what the predictions of the future were based on, this idea that technology and human interest would remain at this, like, really high fever pitch all the time. And so it's interesting now to live inside of a time where that's just not the case. Like, both technology has slowed down, and also it has slowed down because human interest has just been pushed elsewhere. Like, we talked before in the review, too, about the idea of, like, capitalism is something that we as a society are very focused on, and so anything outside of the idea of capitalism that fits into this, like, utopia idea is not taken as seriously anymore. And I feel like especially, like, you can just look at the space race of the 60s and 70s to now and see, like, technology and the advancement and exponential growth of technology just is not viewed the same way anymore. So I find that really interesting. I didn't want to, like, go into a super deep dive about that. That's part of, like, what I studied in school, and so I could, like, literally go on about it forever. So I just wanted to point out there are a couple of, like, really good books about this too. The History of the Future is a great book that breaks down, like, here's what we saw as the future in, like, 50s, and it's because of the way that housing changed, and that's why we predicted that everyone would have houses like this. Or, like, the increase in the use of cars and driving in society is part of why they focused on the idea of flying cars, because, like, oh, this is what we're seeing as exponential growth of our time, and this is what's important to us now as a society. In our future, in our heads as a collective, we see the future as part of that. And so I found that really interesting that the Robinsons kind of, like, seem to really push in that direction too. The other thing that I found really interesting, and I did a little bit of a shallow dive on, is skittery robots. Because I love Doris, and I love the way that Doris, like, has these legs and, like, skitters about. Because I think that there are two really, it's interesting that you get to see both ideas of robots, like capital R robots, as we as humans think of them. As both, like, the person and humanoid-looking robot, and also as this, like, skittery insect bug robot. We as humans are, like, drawn to the idea of humanoid-looking robots, but are also very terrified by it.
Yeah.
But not in a way that we are terrified by robots that look like animals that we don't understand.
Right.
Like, bug robots freak people out in a way that is just, like, deep and in your blood. Like, that thing shouldn't move like that, and like that, your brain just, like, picks up on a piece of that, and it's a huge part of why we just, like, have not invested in insect-like robots. Like, it's something that people fight because there's just this idea that robots mean people, robots mean humanoids, things that can do things in the way that we do them, but, like, automation is happening. Robots already exist.
Yep.
Like, robots are going to take over a third of our jobs by, like, 2030 or whatever. And a huge part of that is robots that are, like, weird, skittery, bug-like robots, because all they do are arms. Like, I need an arm to go over here and pick up this piece of this car and move it over here. Like, that's a huge part of what's been happening with robots. And one of the ones that I found really interesting is that there are tiny little micro robots that are used, that they put inside of your blood vessels, that go inside and they clean your heart. And the way that the robot arms work on these miniature robots is they were based off of cockroaches. Ooh. And so they specifically skitter up the sides of your, like, veins, and so they clear things out. Technically, it's not really that much faster than a catheter, which is the way that they do this right now. But, like, the idea that we built a robot that could get into your blood and, like, actively clean out your heart while there's blood in the way is amazing. It's a thing that, like, if you had told someone 50 years ago that we could put a robot in your heart, they would have been like, get out of here with your devil talk. Like, it's something that seems so out of what we understand, but it's happening already. And so it's a huge part of where we're going. it's also a huge part of what's happening with space technology. Like, why would you make a robot that looks like a human and, like, flails its fucking metal arms around on a space station when you can get, like, a cockroach, stick it to the side of a hull, and have it walk across in a way that, like, actually makes a lot more sense. So that's a way that space technology is definitely moving, and I think we're going to see way more of as we move into the future, too.
Robots are cool.
Robots are so cool!
I had so many random robot-related thoughts while you were talking. Like, with the... It could just be everything reminds me of this movie, but Wild Wild West.
Oh my god, yes.
And
Skittery robots.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Dr. Lovelace has that giant spider.
Yep, Ackroyd. They make so much sense. Like, you have so many legs, they can stabilize you, you can do things with the other legs that function as arms. Like, it's just... Humans are not built to be, like, effective in high manufacturing environments. Like, we're just fucking not. Like, we shouldn't be doing that. It should be robots that are built like fucking crazy monster insects.
Right. I mean, Dr. Octopus was right. Otto Octavius was a genius.
Right, exactly. You just,
he had a bad day.
Swept up in the dark side, I guess. It happens.
Yeah. But as we know from Alfred Molina's portrayal of Doc Ock, he's a good guy.
Yeah. He's multifaceted.
Exactly.
Things happen.
Peter
Parker's a piece of shit.
He really is. I rewatched Spider-Man 3 recently, and that is like such a great example of toxic positivity in that Peter doesn't pay attention to anything that Mary Jane says.
Yeah.
He's just constantly like, it'll get better, you'll do great, you're doing fine.
Yep.
No, Peter, and your stupid dance.
Yeah. Ugh. All of this. Dancing, finger guns. Ugh. Ugh.
Hey. And it's not cool finger guns like Dalton Castle either.
No, he doesn't have, like, chaotic bisexual energy.
No.
He just has, like, gross, skeezy energy. Yeah. It's a very different type of finger gun. Let's not get it confused.
Exactly. Interesting thing about robots.
Yes.
Did you notice that the industries that you can have sex with these robots are advancing at a much quicker rate?
Absolutely. That's what fucking happens with society and technology. Like, look at what happened with our phones. The second we realized we could watch porn on them, the screens got fucking enormous.
Yep.
Like, that's absolutely. It makes sense also. Like, this is the thing that people have wanted forever. People want to buy sex. People want to have sex. We have all these fucking draconian laws about who can buy sex and who cannot buy sex, and like, well, if you're white and rich, we can kind of do like wink wink, look the other way, but like, if you're anyone else, you get fucking thrown in jail or fined for it, and God forbid you be a sex worker who is just meeting the demands that constantly exist.
Yes.
Like, I think it's great that it's advancing, that AI can like take over some of that too. I think it'll bring the stigma down. Who the fuck knows? But yeah, it doesn't really surprise me that that's what's leading the industries in robots.
For the record, sex work is real work.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
put it out there, listeners.
Absolutely. Sex work is real work. If you don't support it, really, really re-examine why and what reasons you have for thinking that it's bad.
Right.
It's bullshit.
But some of these sex toys are just so advanced.
Robotics. That's the whole deal. You can like build whole fucking machines. Whole fucking machines.
Yes.
It's the truth.
Well, that's been Meet the Robinsons. Hope you enjoyed it. I've been Ben Silverio. You can find me on the internet, on Instagram and Twitter at @thesilverio20.
I've been Aaron Klein. You can find me on Instagram at NYD_EarnedNC.
Thank you for joining us here for Time to Party. I'm your host and post, Ansel Birch, and the producer for this show at Indecisionist Productions. Thank you so much for an amazing Season 1 of Time to Party. You can find me at Indecisionist on Twitter and The Indecisionist on Instagram. Special thanks to April Moralba for our podcast art, and to Marlon Longett of Marlon and the Shakes for our amazing theme song.
And if you want to join in the conversation, use the hashtag #Time2, that's the number 2, party.
Recommend movies to us. Talk about the drinking game.
Yeah. Let us know which rules you went with, and how drunk you get.
Absolutely.
And how high you get.
Love it. We love to hear this stuff.
Yes. So until next time.
We're out of time.
We're out of time.
Bye.
Bye.